On a quiet Tuesday morning, attorney Jessica Reynolds sat before the camera, her tone calm but urgent. "Hello, everyone," she began, her voice carrying the steady authority of someone who has spent decades in the courtroom. "If you're a senior who depends on Social Security, what I'm about to tell you could change the way you think about your finances." She explained that a new rule had just gone into effect, one that gives the Social Security Administration unprecedented power, full access to seniors' bank accounts. No longer would they always need to go through lengthy legal processes before reaching into someone's funds. Now, the change could happen quickly, quietly, and without warning. Jessica promised that before the video ended, she would break down exactly what this rule means, how it could impact retirees across the country, and the concrete steps anyone can take to protect themselves. Her eyes met the lens, as if speaking directly to the viewer's living room. "Stay with me," she urged, "because the difference between knowing this now and learning it later could mean the difference between security and crisis." Then, with a reassuring smile, she asked viewers to like the video, leave a comment if Social Security touches their lives, and subscribe for more updates that matter. On a crisp fall morning, when most people were going about their daily routines, a quiet but monumental shift had already taken place in the way the Social Security Administration operates. For decades, the SSA's role had been clear and consistent, to ensure that benefits went only to the people who were entitled to them. It was a mission rooted in fairness, accountability, and the protection of taxpayer dollars. The agency had built a vast system to verify eligibility, detect fraud, and prevent improper payments. And over the years, these safeguards had evolved. Seniors who depended on their monthly checks could take comfort in knowing that, while the SSA had significant oversight powers, their personal bank accounts were generally shielded from direct government access unless a judge explicitly authorized it. This arrangement created a balance. On one side, the government's responsibility to prevent waste and abuse. On the other, the individual's right to manage their money without fear of sudden intrusion. That balance, however, has now shifted. With the introduction of a new rule, the SSA has been granted authority unlike anything it has wielded before. This change gives the agency the ability to access the bank accounts of Social Security recipients directly, without first going through the courts. In practical terms, this means that if the SSA suspects there has been an overpayment or any form of fraud related to a beneficiary's account, they can reach into that account for information, and if they deem it necessary, they can put a hold on funds, sometimes without the account holder being told in advance. The scope of this authority is wide and immediate. No longer bound by the slower, more deliberate process of securing a legal judgment, the SSA can act with speed, requesting detailed records directly from financial institutions and instructing them to freeze money in place. To understand the significance of this change, it helps to recall how things worked before. In the past, the SSA had to prove its case in a legal setting before any account could be frozen or funds could be withdrawn. That process often took weeks or even months, allowing the beneficiary time to receive official notices, consult with an attorney, and prepare a defense if they believed the SSA's claims were in error. It was a slower system, yes, but it offered essential checks and balances, an opportunity for individuals to understand the accusations against them and respond before their access to money was interrupted. Now, with this streamlined access, the procedural hurdles have largely been removed. The SSA can send what's known as a third-party request directly to a bank. This request compels the bank to hand over detailed account information, including balances, deposits, withdrawals, and even a history of transactions. Based on what they find, the SSA can then move to freeze or seize the funds they believe were improperly paid out. For seniors who depend on their Social Security payments as a primary or sole source of income, this authority represents a fundamental shift in the security they once felt over their own money. The government's stated reasoning for this change is straightforward: to strengthen the fight against fraud and to prevent the loss of taxpayer funds. Each year, billions of dollars are paid out in Social Security benefits, and even a small percentage lost to fraud or improper payments can add up to staggering sums. By acting quickly, officials argue, They can stop these losses before they grow and ensure that benefits are distributed only to those who qualify. On paper, the measure looks efficient, even prudent, an additional tool to protect the integrity of a vital public program. But efficiency has a cost, and for many seniors, that cost may be steep. The streamlined authority also strips away much of the notice and preparation time that used to serve as a buffer against mistakes. Fraud detection systems, while advanced, are not flawless. They rely heavily on algorithms, automated cross-checks, and massive datasets, all of which can, and do, produce false positives. When a computer flags an account as suspicious, it triggers an investigative process that can now result in the immediate freezing of funds. This can happen even if the so-called suspicious activity is nothing more than a one-time large deposit from the sale of a car, a gift from a family member, or the relocation of savings between accounts. Imagine, for example, a widow in her late 70s, living alone in a small Midwestern town. Her Social Security check arrives on the 3rd of each month and goes directly into her checking account, from which she pays her mortgage, utilities, and prescription bills. One month, she receives a gift of $5,000 from her daughter to help with home repairs. The sudden deposit catches the attention of the SSA's automated system, which flags her account for review. Under the old process, she might have received a letter weeks later, asking for documentation to explain the deposit. Now, under the new rule, her account could be frozen almost immediately while the SSA investigates, leaving her unable to pay her utility bill or pick up her medications on time. This is the kind of scenario that has senior advocates deeply concerned. The possibility of waking up one morning to find that your bank account has been locked, without any warning or explanation, is not just inconvenient. It's terrifying, especially for those living on fixed incomes. The implications go beyond temporary hardship. A frozen account can mean missed mortgage payments, late fees on essential bills, and the inability to cover emergency expenses. For those without family nearby or other sources of income, it can become a full-blown crisis in a matter of days. The rule's breadth also means it applies across the board. Whether you're a retired worker, a disabled beneficiary, or the survivor of a loved one who paid into the system, the expanded access is the same. Every Social Security recipient's bank account can now be scrutinized with far greater ease than ever before. This includes not only the account into which benefits are deposited, but potentially any account connected to the recipient's name. The SSA's reach has become more comprehensive, giving it a nearly panoramic view of a senior's financial life. For some, this might sound like a small price to pay to prevent fraud, but it's important to remember that in the realm of financial oversight, speed can sometimes outpace accuracy. When the system is designed to act first and ask questions later, it's the innocent who can suffer the most. What was once a cautious, deliberate process has now become one in which the SSA can move swiftly, intervening before the beneficiary has had a chance to understand, let alone contest, the allegations against them. This fundamental change in how Social Security benefits are regulated and protected underscores the need for seniors to be more vigilant than ever. It's no longer enough to assume that if you've done nothing wrong, your funds will remain untouched. The expanded authority means that the decision to freeze an account can hinge on data points and patterns that a computer interprets as suspicious, even when they are entirely legitimate. For seniors, particularly those who are less familiar with digital banking or who rarely check their accounts online, the risk is compounded by the possibility of not realizing a freeze has occurred until they attempt a transaction. Ultimately, the new rule marks a turning point in the relationship between seniors and the Social Security Administration. It's a shift from a model that emphasized due process before action to one that prioritizes rapid intervention, with a hope of reducing losses but at the potential expense of individual stability. The SSA remains committed to ensuring benefits go to the right people, but in doing so, it now wields a tool that can dramatically and immediately alter a person's financial life. Understanding this rule, how it works, why it exists, and what it means in practice, is essential for every Social Security recipient. This is not just a bureaucratic adjustment. It's a change that reaches directly into the day-to-day lives of millions of older Americans, reshaping the balance between protection and intrusion. For many older Americans, life in retirement is a careful balancing act. The rhythm of each month often revolves around the arrival of their Social Security deposit. Money that isn't just helpful, but essential. It covers the mortgage or rent, keeps the lights on, fills the pantry with groceries, pays for prescription refills, and keeps the car running for doctor's appointments or trips to see grandchildren. Unlike younger workers who can pick up extra shifts or side jobs to fill in a gap, seniors living on a fixed income rarely have that flexibility. Every dollar is accounted for, and any disruption, no matter how small, can send ripples through the entire household budget. Now imagine that one morning, without warning, you log into your bank account to check your balance and see a message that your funds are on hold. There's no detailed explanation, no prior phone call, no letter in the mailbox. All you know is that the money you were counting on to pay next week's utility bill or buy groceries is suddenly out of reach. The timing couldn't be worse. Your prescriptions need refilling, your property taxes are due, and the friend who usually helps with expenses is out of town. The stress of not knowing when, or if, you'll regain access to your funds is enough to keep you awake at night. This is not a far-fetched scenario. Under the new Social Security rule, the agency can now freeze or restrict a beneficiary's account almost immediately if it suspects an overpayment or possible fraud. And here's the unsettling truth: suspicion doesn't always mean there's real wrongdoing. Much of the SSA's fraud detection is automated, relying on algorithms that scan for unusual patterns in account activity. These systems are fast, but they aren't perfect. They might flag a one-time large deposit from selling a car, a gift from a family member, or even a sudden increase in medical reimbursements. In the eyes of the algorithm, these transactions could resemble suspicious activity, and that's enough to trigger action. False positives, cases where an innocent person is flagged as a potential problem, are an unfortunate reality in any automated system. But in the context of Social Security benefits, a false positive isn't just a minor inconvenience. It can cause genuine harm. If your account is frozen, even temporarily, you may not be able to pay your bills on time. Late payments can lead to fees, penalties, or even the loss of essential services. If your pharmacy won't release your medication until payment is processed, your health could be put at risk. And for seniors who rely on public transportation services that require booking and payment, a frozen account might mean missing important medical appointments altogether. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The emotional toll is equally significant. Financial stability is deeply tied to a sense of independence, especially in the later years of life. When that stability is suddenly disrupted, through no fault of your own, it can leave you feeling powerless. The confusion of not knowing exactly why your account is frozen or how to resolve the issue quickly can be overwhelming. For some, the instinct is to panic. For others, it's to shut down and hope the problem resolves itself. Unfortunately, in this new system, waiting passively can make matters worse. Delays in responding to the SSA's actions can lengthen the time your funds remain inaccessible, increasing the strain on both your finances and your peace of mind. It's important to understand that this rule represents a power shift, away from the individual and toward the SSA. In the past, beneficiaries had more time to respond before any action was taken against their funds. There was usually a formal notice, a clear explanation of the concern, and an opportunity to submit documents or explanations before money was touched. Now, the process can work in reverse. The freeze comes first, and your chance to defend yourself comes later. This act now, ask questions later approach may help the agency prevent real cases of fraud more quickly, but it also means that innocent seniors can be swept up in the same net. The impact of this shift goes beyond the immediate freeze. When your funds are locked, even for a short period, the disruption can cascade through every aspect of your financial life. A missed mortgage payment could affect your credit score. A delayed utility bill could result in a service shut-off notice. If you're late on medical bills, you might find your account sent to collections. These secondary consequences can linger long after the initial freeze is resolved, creating additional financial hurdles that take months, or even years, to clear. And then there's the question of trust. Seniors have spent a lifetime building relationships with their banks, trusting that their accounts are safe havens for the money they've worked hard to earn. Knowing that an outside agency can now bypass the courts and access those funds without prior notice changes the nature of that trust. It introduces a constant undercurrent of uncertainty, an awareness that, at any moment, the money you depend on could be locked away, pending an investigation you might not even fully understand. This is why so many senior advocates are sounding the alarm. The risks aren't limited to those who have committed fraud. They extend to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, simply because the detection systems aren't infallible. When speed becomes the priority, accuracy can suffer, and the people most likely to be caught in the crossfire are those least able to absorb the financial shock. Consider a retired couple in their early 70s, living in a modest home in a small town. Their combined Social Security checks cover their basic needs with a little left over for occasional treats, a dinner out, a visit from the grandchildren. One month, they decide to consolidate their small savings accounts into a single account to simplify their finances. The transfer, while entirely legitimate, triggers an SSA review. Before they know it, the account holding both their Social Security deposits and their savings is frozen. They have enough cash on hand to cover a week or two, but beyond that, they're forced to make impossible choices. Do they pay the electric bill or refill their heart medication? Do they buy groceries or gas for the car? The stress of these decisions isn't just financial, it's emotional and physical. Worry can raise blood pressure, disrupt sleep, and contribute to feelings of isolation and depression. For seniors already managing chronic health conditions, the added strain can take a serious toll. And because these freezes can happen with little to no warning, there's often no opportunity to prepare or put contingency plans in place. In this new reality, the burden falls on seniors to stay constantly alert, checking bank balances more frequently, watching for irregularities, and keeping careful records of every communication from the SSA. While vigilance is always wise, the need for this level of hyper-awareness is a heavy weight to carry, especially in what should be a time of greater peace and security. The bottom line is simple but sobering. The new rule changes the playing field. It gives the SSA the ability to intervene in a beneficiary's financial life faster than ever before, but it also increases the likelihood that innocent people will experience unnecessary hardship. For those living on a fixed income, even a temporary freeze can set off a chain reaction of financial strain, emotional distress, and long-term consequences. The challenge for seniors now is not just to understand the rule, but to adapt to it, to take proactive steps to safeguard their funds, maintain open lines of communication with their banks, and be ready to act immediately if trouble arises. Because in this new system, the time between everything's fine and your account is frozen can be as short as a single transaction. For most people, a bank account feels like a private space, secure, personal, and shielded from outside eyes unless you give permission. For seniors who have spent decades working, saving, and living within their means, that account represents not just money, but a lifetime of effort and independence. Yet under the new Social Security rule, that privacy has narrowed in ways many don't realize. The Social Security Administration can now reach directly into a beneficiary's banking world, not to withdraw funds immediately in all cases, but to view and assess it in unprecedented detail. Understanding how this process works is crucial for any retiree who depends on Social Security to cover daily expenses. When the SSA suspects an overpayment or potential fraud tied to a person's benefits, they no longer need to go through a lengthy legal process to gather financial evidence. Instead, they send what is called a third-party request straight to the bank or credit union holding your account. This request isn't a casual inquiry. It is a formal, legally binding demand for information. The bank must respond. They don't get to weigh the fairness of the request or consult you for approval. Once it lands in their system, compliance is mandatory. That compliance means the bank will pull detailed records about your account and send them to the SSA. We're not talking about a vague statement or a balance summary. The agency can request a breakdown of your recent deposits, withdrawals, and even the pattern of your transactions. They can see how much came in from Social Security, how often you withdraw cash, whether you've had large deposits from other sources, and the flow of money between accounts. It's a snapshot of your financial life that goes far beyond a monthly statement. And it doesn't stop at one account. If you hold multiple accounts, maybe a checking account for bills, a savings account for emergencies, or a joint account with a spouse, any of these could be included in the request. The SSA's reach can extend to more than one bank or credit union, meaning that if you have accounts at different institutions, each of them could be required to hand over your information. The rule gives the agency a much wider lens, allowing it to piece together a fuller picture of your finances. For someone who thought their separate accounts were insulated from one another, this can be an unsettling realization. The next step is where the process becomes more disruptive. If, after reviewing your account details, the SSA believes you were overpaid or that improper activity occurred, they can instruct the bank to freeze or place a hold on funds. This is not a polite suggestion. It is a directive the bank must follow. And here's the part that catches many off guard. There is no requirement that you be informed before the hold is applied. In other words, you could go about your week assuming all is well, only to discover the problem when a payment is declined at the grocery store or your online bill pay fails to process. For seniors who are used to predictable financial routines, this kind of surprise can be jarring. Imagine standing in line at the pharmacy with your prescription ready, only to have your debit card declined because your account has been locked. Or setting out to pay your utility bill, only to find the online system rejecting the payment. By the time you realize what's happening, the hold is already in place, and you're scrambling to find out why. Part of the reason these freezes can be so abrupt is that the SSA's requests are often automated. In many cases, computer systems flag an account based on transaction patterns, triggering a request to the bank without lengthy human review. Banks, in turn, have their automated compliance systems to ensure they respond quickly. This creates a chain reaction, one automated system speaking to another, that can move faster than the people involved can keep up. The speed might be useful in genuine fraud cases, but it also increases the risk of errors. A data mismatch, an unusual but legitimate deposit, or even a clerical slip can set the whole process in motion. The frequency of these requests can also be higher than most people realize. They're not limited to rare, high-stakes investigations. Because the rule was designed to make fraud detection more efficient, the SSA can issue multiple requests over time, even to the same individual or institution. This means your account could be reviewed more than once, and in some cases, repeatedly if the system continues to detect what it considers anomalies. For seniors who prefer a low profile in their finances, the thought of regular outside scrutiny can feel intrusive. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Banks themselves are in a difficult position. Federal law obligates them to comply with these requests promptly, and there are penalties for failing to do so. This pressure means they're unlikely to push back or delay unless there's a clear legal reason. Some banks might choose to notify their customers when a request has been made, but this is not a universal policy. Others may comply quietly, sharing your financial records without you knowing until a freeze or hold impacts your access to money. For those who've always thought of their bank as an ally, this new dynamic can feel like a breach of trust, even if the institution is simply following the law. The relationship changes when you realize that the contents of your account can be examined, and potentially locked, based on a decision made outside your control, without your immediate involvement. The wide-reaching nature of this authority also means it's not confined to traditional checking and savings accounts. In some cases, it could extend to money market accounts, certain retirement accounts, or other financial instruments that are easily accessible through your bank or credit union. While some funds may be legally protected from seizure under federal law, the process of determining that protection doesn't necessarily happen before the freeze is applied. This means your access to the money could still be interrupted while the details are sorted out. It's important to remember that while the SSA frames this process as a necessary tool to combat fraud and prevent improper payments, the effect on an innocent senior can be deeply disruptive. The automation and breadth of the requests mean that even minor irregularities can attract attention. Once that happens, the gears of the system turn quickly, often faster than an individual can respond. Picture a retiree who has just sold a small boat, depositing the proceeds into her account. To her, it's a straightforward transaction. Money from a personal sale going toward home repairs. To the automated system, it's a large, unexplained deposit into an account that normally only sees Social Security deposits and small withdrawals. The request goes out, the bank responds, and before she knows it, part of her funds are locked while she tries to prove the legitimacy of the sale. These scenarios highlight why understanding the mechanics of SSA access is not just an academic exercise, it's a practical necessity. Knowing that the agency can initiate a third-party request at any time, that your bank is required to comply, and that holds can be placed without notice means you can prepare. That preparation might include keeping a portion of funds in an account not linked to Social Security deposits, regularly reviewing your account for irregularities, and keeping documentation for large transactions handy. The new rule has redefined the boundary between personal finance and government oversight. It has shifted some of the control out of the hands of seniors and into the systems of both the SSA and their financial institutions. While it may indeed help catch fraudulent activity more quickly, it also opens the door for misunderstandings and errors that can disrupt the lives of those who have done nothing wrong. For older Americans, the takeaway is sobering but clear. Your financial privacy is no longer as absolute as it once was, and your ability to access your money now depends not just on your actions, but on the interpretations and decisions of systems you may never see. Understanding that reality is the first step toward protecting yourself in this new landscape. For many seniors, the idea that the Social Security Administration could suddenly freeze or restrict access to their bank account feels like something far removed from daily life, until it happens. In that moment, panic can set in. How will the mortgage be paid this month? Will the pharmacy still release the needed medication? How can anyone manage without access to the money they rely on every day? But as frightening as it sounds, it's important to remember that even under this new rule, you are not without rights. Knowing those rights and how to use them can mean the difference between a temporary inconvenience and a prolonged financial crisis. The first and most important safeguard you have is the right to dispute and appeal. If the SSA freezes your account or claims you were overpaid, that is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a process in which you are entitled to fight back. You can request a reconsideration, which means asking the agency to take another look at their decision. If that doesn't resolve the issue, you can escalate to a formal hearing before an administrative law judge. At that hearing, you are allowed to present evidence, explain your side of the situation, and challenge the assumptions or data the SSA is using against you. This is not a favor the agency extends. It is your legal right, and it exists to ensure that no one loses access to funds based solely on an unverified accusation or a computer flag. Equally important is your right to information transparency. When the SSA takes action against your account, they are gathering data, account balances, transaction histories, deposit records, and you have the right to see exactly what they have collected. This matters because it allows you to identify errors, misunderstandings, or even simple clerical mistakes that may have led to the freeze. For example, if the SSA's records show a large deposit and classify it as unreported income, you can provide documentation proving it was a gift from a family member or the sale of personal property, neither of which should count against your benefits. Without transparency, you are left in the dark, trying to guess what went wrong. With it, you can respond with clarity and precision. However, one of the more challenging aspects of this new rule is how notification requirements are applied. Under the old system, you typically received notice before any action was taken. You had time to prepare, gather evidence, and respond. Now, the notification may come after your account is already frozen. The SSA is still required to inform you, but the timing has shifted in a way that often puts you in a reactive position rather than a proactive one. That's why it's so critical to monitor your accounts closely and act quickly if you notice anything unusual, because the official letter explaining the freeze might not arrive until days later. By then, you could already be facing bounced payments or late fees. When navigating this process, you do not have to do it alone. There is a broad network of legal aid and advocacy support available to seniors. Many non-profit organizations, senior centers, and community legal services have attorneys or trained advocates who specialize in Social Security and elder law. These professionals can guide you through the appeal process, help you complete paperwork accurately, and represent you in hearings if necessary. In some cases, they can even intervene early enough to prevent a freeze from dragging on unnecessarily. If hiring a private attorney is financially out of reach, pro bono legal aid can be a lifeline. The key is to reach out for help as soon as possible. Waiting too long can make the situation harder to resolve. Another layer of protection comes from the fact that some money in your account may be exempt from seizure under federal law. For example, Supplemental Security Income, SSI, is generally protected from being taken to repay certain debts. The same may be true for specific types of veterans' benefits, certain disability payments, or state-level assistance funds. However, Social Security retirement or disability benefits don't always fall under these exemptions, and the rules can be complicated. That's why it's vital to understand exactly what kind of benefits you receive and whether any of them are shielded from collection. Even if your funds are technically exempt, a freeze can still temporarily block your access until the bank and the SSA confirm the source of the money. That delay can be frustrating, but knowing the law is on your side can help you press for a quicker resolution. It's also worth noting that the way you structure your finances can make a difference. If you receive both protected and non-protected funds, keeping them in separate accounts can help prevent confusion if the SSA ever issues a freeze. That way, it's easier to prove that certain deposits should not be touched, reducing the chance that all of your money will be caught in a blanket hold. Understanding these rights is more than a legal exercise. It's a form of financial self-defense. The new rule has tilted the balance of power toward the SSA, allowing them to act first and explain later. But that does not erase your ability to challenge their actions, demand transparency, and protect at least some of your income from being taken. What it does mean is that you must be more vigilant and more prepared than before. Keep records of every SSA letter, email, and phone call. Save your bank statements and receipts for large transactions. Maintain a folder, whether paper or digital, where all of this information is stored in one place, ready to be used if you ever need to defend yourself. Think of it this way. In the same way you might keep a flashlight and first aid kit handy in case of a power outage or storm, you should keep your financial emergency kit ready for the possibility of an SSA freeze. It's not about living in fear. It's about being ready to respond swiftly and effectively if the situation arises. And while it's true that many seniors may never experience this problem firsthand, the consequences for those who do can be severe enough to warrant preparation. The takeaway is clear. Knowledge is both a shield and a tool. By understanding your rights to dispute and appeal, to see the evidence against you, to receive notification, to access legal and advocacy help, and to safeguard exempt funds, you give yourself the best possible chance of emerging from a freeze with your finances and independence intact. The SSA's expanded powers under the new rule may be here to stay, but so are your rights. And the sooner you know how to use them, the stronger your position will be if you ever need to fight for your financial stability. Would you like me to now create Jai Don 6? What can seniors do now to protect themselves? In the same 100-plus word storytelling style, so the flow from this section continues naturally. For seniors living on a fixed income, the introduction of this new Social Security rule isn't just a policy shift, it's a wake-up call. While it's tempting to hope you'll never be caught in the web of an account freeze or mistaken overpayment claim, hope alone isn't a strategy. In today's environment, where the SSA can move swiftly and without prior warning, preparation is more than a good idea. it's essential. Protecting yourself now, before there's a problem, can make the difference between a short-lived inconvenience and a prolonged financial nightmare. The first and most immediate habit to develop is to monitor your bank accounts closely. This means more than glancing at your balance once in a while. Many banks now allow you to set up custom alerts, text messages or emails that notify you when certain events occur. You can choose to get notified if your balance dips below a set amount, if a transaction over a certain threshold is made, or if a withdrawal happens without your debit card present. By reviewing your statements weekly, and your transactions daily if possible, you can spot suspicious activity, or worse, a sudden freeze, before it spirals out of control. Early detection gives you a fighting chance to respond quickly, which is critical under the new rule, where time is often not on your side. Just as important is your commitment to keeping detailed records of all correspondence with the SSA. Every letter, email, and phone call matters. When you receive something in writing from the agency, keep the original and make a copy. For phone conversations, jot down the date, time, the name of the representative, and the details of what was said. Screenshots of emails and scanned documents should be stored in a safe place, either in a physical binder or on a secure digital drive. These records can be your strongest defense in proving that you acted promptly or that you were given conflicting information. In disputes with any large agency, the ability to present a clear paper trail often carries more weight than verbal explanations alone. The next step is to understand your bank's policies regarding SSA requests. Not all financial institutions handle these the same way. Some will notify you before they release your account information or apply a freeze. Others will comply immediately without any prior notice. Sit down with your banker and ask direct questions. What is your procedure if you get a request from the SSA? Will I be informed? How quickly do you respond? What safeguards do you have to prevent errors? Understanding their process now will prevent you from being blindsided later. This is especially important if you bank with multiple institutions, as each one may operate differently. Another practical safeguard is to separate your funds into different accounts. Many seniors deposit all income, Social Security, pensions, savings, into a single account. While simple, this approach can make you more vulnerable. If the SSA freezes your main account, you could lose access to all your funds, even those unrelated to Social Security. By setting up a dedicated account for your Social Security deposits, used only for essential expenses like rent, utilities, and groceries, you can protect other money you may have in savings or from other income sources. This separation limits the scope of any freeze and makes it easier to track and prove the origin of funds. If you do notice unusual activity or get word from the SSA that there's an issue, seek legal advice promptly. Don't wait until your account has been locked for weeks or until late fees are piling up. Attorneys who specialize in Social Security and elder law understand the intricacies of the system and can often intervene early to prevent escalation. Even a brief consultation can clarify your rights, outline the steps to take, and ensure you meet all deadlines for appeals or documentation. If cost is a concern, look for nonprofit organizations or legal aid services that offer free or low-cost help to seniors. The sooner you get professional guidance, the better your chances of resolving the situation quickly. Lastly, educate yourself and the trusted people in your life. Many seniors rely on adult children, close friends, or caregivers to help manage finances. Make sure these individuals know about the new SSA rule and understand the potential risks. Share your plan for monitoring accounts, keeping records, and responding to freezes. If you ever become ill, travel, or are otherwise unable to handle an issue immediately, a trusted contact who knows the steps to take can act on your behalf. This kind of preparedness can mean the difference between a brief disruption and a drawn-out crisis. Taking these actions may feel like extra work now, but they're the kind of protective habits that can save you from far greater stress later. Think of them as the financial equivalent of keeping smoke detectors working and an emergency kit stocked. You hope you'll never need them, but if the day comes, you'll be glad they're there. The new SSA rule gives the agency faster and broader powers, but it doesn't strip you of control entirely. By staying vigilant, organized, and proactive, you can keep more of that control in your hands, where it belongs. In the end, the goal isn't to live in constant worry. It's to live with confidence, knowing you've taken practical steps to protect your financial lifeline. And for seniors whose Social Security benefits are the bedrock of independence, that peace of mind is worth every bit of effort. When your lifeline is suddenly interrupted, every hour matters. If you ever wake up to find your account frozen, the first step is to call your bank immediately and ask why the hold was placed and how much is affected. Then reach out to the Social Security Administration to understand exactly what triggered the action. Keep calm, take notes, and request all the details they have on file. If you believe there's been a mistake, file an appeal right away. This is your right, and it's the first step toward restoring access to your funds. You don't have to face this alone. Non-profit organizations, senior advocacy groups, and pro bono lawyers are there to guide you through the process. They can help you gather the right documents, speak on your behalf, and push for a faster resolution. If you're struggling to cover essentials like food, medication, or utility bills during a freeze, seek out local emergency assistance programs. Community centers, churches, and charitable organizations often provide immediate relief when times get tough. Looking ahead, the future of senior benefits will likely be shaped by the ongoing struggle to balance fraud prevention with the rights of older Americans. The SSA's expanded powers may stop bad actors, but they also risk harming innocent retirees caught in the crossfire. That's why awareness and preparation are your best defenses. Stay informed about changes in the law, keep your finances organized, and build a plan with trusted family or friends so you're never caught off guard. If you found this information helpful, I invite you to join our community here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with others who rely on Social Security. Together, we can stay ahead of the changes, protect our financial independence, and make sure our voices are heard.